Hi, I'm GC. I'm a recovering gambling addict, and I don't know how that happened. Gambling's been around forever, like ancient Egypt forever. Since time immemorial, man has found ways to needlessly risk their belongings in games of chance. On the precipice of civilization, dating to the times of gods and tyrants, gambling has... You get the point. You know what gambling is. We can skip the history lesson. Take notes, junior video essayists. Nowadays, gambling is an industry estimated to be worth over 700 billion US dollars. It's a global market built around finding ways to sucker people out of their money with the false promise they might be the lucky few to win it big. This means a ton of money goes into advertising the joy of gambling, including making it seem mega cool and awesome to do. And so far, it's working pretty well. Tons of movies give gambling this debonair aesthetic with a dash of danger. We have books on the art of gambling. Professionals with the ins and outs of moving the odds in your favor do seminars on gambling. Heck, we got gambling tournaments hosted in cities dedicated to gambling. And video games are full of references to casinos and have been shoveling gambling minigames and mechanics into the hands of players since, at the very least, the 80s. Ever since, gambling minigames have evolved from simple slot machines your typical first-year computer science student can program, to complex card games and even cheating mechanics to outsmart your opponents in a different way. Have you ever wondered why though? Why adding gambling to games is so popular? Well, there's plenty of reasons. Simplest one, art imitates life. People put entertainment they enjoy in the entertainment they create. Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest, is a well-known gambler and loves recreating his favorite casinos in his games. Dragon Quest XI's casinos, for example, strongly resemble Caesar's Palace and the Venetian, respectively. But the series has had gambling since Dragon Quest III, where players could bet on monster fights. Yeah, I know, I try to shoehorn Dragon Quest into everything. I'm sorry. At least it's relevant this time. Another great reason? Realism. In the early 19th century, poker exploded in popularity here in the United States on gambling boats along the Mississippi River and in Louisiana. It kept growing from there, and many other variants of poker, including Texas Hold'em, were born from it. It's become a center stage attraction at casinos, and the World Series of Poker is a huge event every year now. Any game set in the 19th and 20th century, especially in the United States, would lack authenticity without a poker minigame, or a table and a bunch of dusty old folks hunched over some cards. Games aiming for historical accuracy, like Red Dead Redemption, without poker are like a cowboy without their horse, missing a vital piece of the whole historic ensemble. Likewise, games like Dead Rising 2 are literally on a casino strip. It'd be strange if there weren't slot machines and poker matches at all. I've also got a personal theory as to why we see a lot of gambling and casino levels in games. It's a combination of the last two reasons with an extra dash of cynicism on top. If your game is going to have a casino-themed level or gambling in it, it stands to reason some amount of field research would be required. For instance, let's say we knew we were doing a research trip across America. Well, wouldn't it be great if there was a casino level? Oh, we'd have to do the proper company-funded research, of course. As long as the producers come along, I'm sure we'd be able to make such an influential stop on our trip a possibility. Yeah, there's no substantial evidence, but it's always felt to me like an open secret in the gaming industry. Putting gambling in your video game makes it easier to write off a trip to Las Vegas. It's definitely not a secret there's movies out there which were made specifically as excuses to go to Vegas. A lot of media, probably. So I'm willing to bet it's relatively common in the games industry as well. Not to say people aren't doing their jobs while they're there or the end result is poor, but I mean, come on. The only people who think about casinos enough to implement them in their work are people who've stepped foot in one. There's a bit of a problem though. Physical gambling, going to a casino, playing in poker tournaments, those are strictly age-gated. You can't be under the legal gambling age and have a single foot on the casino floor. I would know. I've been to Vegas more than a few times, a couple of which I was still a minor. Casino security will swarm on a child next to a slot machine like flies on shit because of the consequences they'd face if said child so much as hit the shiny button on the machine once. Casinos also have to make a concerted effort to warn and educate about gambling addictions, so they have signs with the gambling addiction hotline plastered everywhere. You can't really go 2 seconds in Las Vegas, whether it's a sign on the wall, an ad on the television, or an ad plane in the sky, yes, really, cautioning their guests about taking things too far. Some would say gambling laws are lax in certain areas, but the casino don't mess around when minors get involved. At least with physical gambling. In video games, no one can stop me and nobody cares how far I go. After all, the currency I'm using, traditionally, is entirely virtual. Fable 2's pub games weren't going to drive me into debt in real life, and neither would playing blackjack in Fallout New Vegas. And I'm old enough to separate fact from fiction. I know the excessive gambling I'm doing is a terrible habit to commit to outside of this fantasy experience I'm indulging in. One theoretically without consequences. One where I can turn the game off without wondering where my money went. But I'm speaking with hindsight, with wisdom learned from my personal past with gambling. I also know the line between fantasy and reality when it comes to gambling can blur for many people. In other words, just because you aren't actually losing money doesn't mean you aren't still developing the habit. Gambling in video games doesn't come with the same warnings gambling in real life does. There are no cautionary signs about ending up too deep, mostly because there are no legal issues with the absence of gambling addiction warnings in the context of a digital gambling game with no tangible financial stake, which somewhat reveals the intent of those warnings in real life scenarios. Casinos want to be above legal reproach for creating gambling addictions, but they don't want to entirely prevent them, because they would want nothing more. I don't think every video game developer wants to instill a gambling addiction in their audience, but I don't think they're thinking too hard about the implications of allowing players to freely gamble in their games, nor the predatory ideas behind the way gambling is designed. However, some definitely do, and are definitely trying. I'll explain in a second. A slot machine is built to glue whoever is using it to the screen with a false hope of success. When you win, lots of lights go off, wonderful sounds start to play, and some machines go into free bonus spins with a catchy song. All over the front of the machine is an in-depth explanation of the various payouts in varying font sizes to draw your eyes to the potential huge win you can score. Nowadays, they even make the buttons on the slot machine colorful and fun to press. Their payouts are designed to convince you can make back the money you lost by continuing to play. They're designed to fool you into thinking it isn't completely, abysmally random. That at some point, statistically soon, you're going to hit big. And as both video game and gambling technology became more sophisticated, the approximation of a real-life slot machine eventually became the emulation of the same exact software. And for developers, nothing could be more accurate, more authentic, or more engaging for their audience than an exact replica of the same machines which enthralled them. But video game developers don't technically need to be aware of what this technology is designed to do: create addiction. You see, it doesn't matter whether the loss is physical or digital, fake or real. The machine doesn't even care whether you win or lose. It just wants you to keep playing, because you're definitely going to lose more than you win if you do. But like I mentioned, I'm an adult. I'm aware of what this machine is for and what it's designed to do. I can remind myself of these things and make some rules to follow when I gamble. I can hold myself accountable. I know the people who put this into their game maybe didn't know about how deceptive gambling can be and how easy it is for gambling to instill poor habits. And like me, they are also adults who probably have the context of having seen the gambling addiction signs or know about gambling laws. So why is this stuff in games made for kids and teenagers? My earliest memory with gambling comes from playing Pokemon Yellow and finding the Celadon Game Corner. I had never seen a slot machine before. I didn't know what gambling was. I was 7 years old. I remember burning all of my money on the slot machines, then heading out to the route right outside Celadon and fighting the trainers there to spend the money I won in those battles on more spins. I would spend the rest of this playthrough going back to the game corner once I cleared a gym to keep spinning reels. I did it again in Pokemon Silver. I did it again in Pokemon Ruby. I did it again in Pokemon Diamond. I did it again in Pokemon Heart Gold. But I was 16 when I played Pokemon Heart Gold. I'd already played in the Dragon Quest casinos in the same way too. I'd already sunk my entire battle chip library into Mega Man Battle Network's battle chip gacha machine. I'd already become enamored with Texas Hold'em and 5-card stud through Western RPGs and AAA adventure games. I even played it after school with my friends during sleepovers. And wouldn't you know it, I had terrible impulse control. The games I grew up with were grooming a future gambler long before I even knew what the hell a casino was. By the time I did, I didn't think of gambling as an opportunity to win something. I thought of gambling as an itch I needed to scratch. I thought of it like this innate quality all human beings had and needed to satiate once in a while. And after all, why wouldn't I think that? See, it wasn't just a video games are letting children gamble situation. What we call a video game wasn't the impetus of gambling in games. That's the title of the video. I just said it in the script. I'm using humor to deflect the seriousness of the discussion so that you don't leave. As early as 1971, entertainment aimed at young audiences was already taking advantage of impulsive behavior and methods built for stoking the fires of addiction. Because 1971 saw the invention of the first coin-operated arcade machine. I'm truncating history a little bit here too. Did you know, for example, that early pinball machines were largely based on luck, paid out in cash, and didn't have any flippers to allow the player any way of improving their score? In fact, most coin-operated machines, including gumball machines, were workarounds for gambling laws back in the day. Because the prize of the gumball machine, if you won, was gum, and not money, which made it not gambling. Gee, this sounds really familiar. And yeah, most were still aimed at children even back then. There's this Verge article about it from 2013 you can read. It's a neat article, I think. Arcades have been a thing for a very long time, and the coin-operated video game machine continues to survive to this day, though now we load fake credit cards with points we bought with real money to play them. So now we're coupling gambling addictions with lines of credit, I guess. I would hope you've been to an arcade before, but if you haven't, every machine requires money to play, and the games you can play, traditionally, notoriously, are designed to take as much of your money as it can. They fall under two categories: quarter munchers and slot machines. Quarter munchers are incredibly difficult to play or easy to lose in. They're full of incredibly unfair challenges in order for players to arrive at the game over/continue screen, where you feed the machine more money to continue the game from the point you lost at. Quarter munchers are famous for hitting you with a sudden difficulty spike right before a boss, or upping the ante if you're doing too well in order to compel you into spending a little bit more on the same machine. Slot machines are slot machines. Basically a slot machine. Deceptively a slot machine. Literally a slot machine. These are your wheel spins, your coin pushers, your "this balloon is totally gonna pop" machines. Instead of money, you get tickets, so it's not technically gambling. But tell that to the kid who spent $20 trying to score the jackpot so he could spend the tickets on a Hot Wheels lamp. Was it really about owning a Hot Wheels lamp? Or does the Hot Wheels lamp simply justify burning all your money on the spinny thing? Nothing about either of these kinds of machines is fundamentally different from spinning the reels. Again, it doesn't care whether you win or lose. It just wants you to keep playing. The horrifying reality is kids are being conditioned into gambling addicts at young ages from multiple directions, and it's always from the gaming sector, be it video games, arcade games, or trading card games. I'm a big fan of Magic: The Gathering, and I was a bigger fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! In high school. Going into college, my friends and I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Around the same time I started working. As you might know, card game manufacturers sell their product through booster packs. Booster packs typically have a random assortment of 9 through 15 cards from a much larger set depending on the game they're from. The cards have different rarities, and the ratio of those rarities in every pack is usually something like, I don't know, half of it is commons, 2/3 of what's left is uncommon, and usually you'll always get at least one rare, or secret rare, or mythic rare card, whatever you want to call it. You never know what's in the pack before you open it, and many Magic: The Gathering players fall into a nasty habit of buying pack after pack, hoping they'll pull the super rare card they want, even if they spend more than what the card is actually worth on the packs they are opening. These booster packs are also sold in large quantities as booster boxes, 24 to 36 packs each. This is gambling. Falling into this hole and not buying singles because you really want to win big with one of these packs is a gambling addiction. What I would do with every day off I had was take the money I had earned serving tables at IHOP, which is not a lot of money if you've ever worked at an IHOP, and buy about 4 to 5 boxes in one sitting, and sit there, and open packs, in front of everybody. At some point, I fell out of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was curious, so I collected all my receipts and counted up how much I had spent. Now keep in mind, at the time, every booster box for Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards was roughly $60 to $80. It was like a beautiful golden age where things were a reasonable price. I had spent close to $3,000 in a 9-month period on opening Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster packs. But I had only played Yu-Gi-Oh! For 5 months. I kept buying cards after the fact because I wanted to open packs, and here's the kicker, I still own most of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. They're not worth anything, their common and power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has rendered them useless. They sit in my closet like a monolith to my vices. Does anyone want to buy a bulk box of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards? I gotta get rid of these Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, man. They're taking up space. Intentional or not, one of the pillars of our favorite gaming-related hobbies is dedicated to instilling irresponsible gambling habits. There's luckily been some work to correct this mistake and push video games away from its gambling origins. Modern Pokemon games have discontinued the inclusion of game corners for obvious reasons regarding the target age of their audience and Japan's relatively fresh anti-gambling laws. Games which retain their gambling aspects do so with restraint and will often undermine the minigame itself by including built-in cheating methods. Other games just try and keep it as minimal to the experience as possible. A gachapon machine, for example, is small, out of the way, and unremarkable, but I still have an issue with them for all the same reasons. Unfortunately, video games remain firmly in gambling's pocket. There's been an equal push in the opposite direction by powerful companies in the industry and the growing mobile market, which already resembles the exploitative gaming industry of the 20th century, geared towards making gamblers out of minors. Gambling in video games has since shed its misguided minigame disguise and proudly sits on the box as a fun, exciting feature for people to experience. It was always a business practice, they just stopped pretending it isn't. Loot boxes have been explained, discussed, and beaten to death. Anyone ignoring the parallels between opening loot boxes and opening TCG booster packs isn't trying to have an honest conversation with you. Maybe they really have no clue. Consider it your chance to explain it to them. I really can't stand the cosmetics argument in regards to these gambling systems, where someone will defend it by saying you can't use what you win to gain an in-game advantage because it completely misses the point of what gambling is trying to get you to do. It doesn't matter if you win a new cosmetic or not. What matters is how badly they can get you to want one, and the easiest way to is to dangle the chance of getting it at a low cost right in your face until you fall for a sunk cost fallacy and either gamble until you win it, pay a flat amount after gambling and losing, or continue to play the game for free spins and generate good metadata for shareholder meetings. And all of these simply rely on this dice roll or this costume to feel or look good enough to create a compulsion to keep playing. The gacha genre is immensely profitable and popular on mobile phones and relies entirely on enticing players in with valuable seasonal character pools from a huge roster of possible outcomes. Star Wars, Galaxy of Heroes, and Fate Grand Order are just 3 of hundreds of gacha games marketed through the advertising of new jackpot characters to pull from their weekly draws or seasonal events. These games will also limit the amount of interactions or rewards a player can earn in a single sitting and dangle a refresh of those limits like a carrot on a stick. There's already research done into uncovering how these games are built around attracting what's referred to as a whale, a person willing to drop hundreds of dollars on premium currency for more pools or more daily energy to continue playing the game. What we refer to as a whale is more often than not a person suffering from a gambling addiction, regardless if they are aware of it or not. Stephanie Sterling made a great video with Laura K. Dale about this, and I highly recommend it if you're interested in the topic. But you don't have to be a whale to succumb to the same strategies used to entrap them. If the possibility of pulling a brand new character and using it to get through a progression wall which caused you to drop the game before convinces you to pick it back up again, you're buying into the gambling aspect of winning big on a machine that scorned you once before. Oh, maybe this time. If you play these gacha games without spending money on premium currency, but you painstakingly go through the trouble to amass enough of it through free-to-play means just so you can spin the wheel again, you're doing what a lot of gambling addicts do. You're creating and rationalizing the means to continue gambling. And even though it isn't about buying premium currency or spending real money right now, it can easily become the case in the future. As long as you keep playing, you can still be made into a revenue source. All it takes is a bad day, or a hot streak you don't want to end, or a series of unfortunate events compelling you to force or fabricate a lucky moment for the peace of mind. You need to understand, gambling addiction isn't an aspect of greed or lack of moral fiber or willpower. It's incredibly similar, if not the same as, a drug addiction. There's a release of dopamine in your brain when you win, and the more you play, the greater the tolerance you build against that dopamine. This means you need to gamble more and more until you're satisfied. When you lose a lot, you feel guilty about all the money you lost, and then keep gambling to win it all back, which means you lose more money. I made a video about finishing games and the fabricated culture surrounding video games by video game companies meant to keep us glued to the games we play via fear of exclusion or guilt, while also creating a compulsion for us to buy games as soon as they come out. We're being taught to be impulsive buyers and are then manipulated to continue playing well past the point we wish to in order to satisfy some unknown sense of obligation. This is just the way gambling works, modified for a slightly different part of the market. Many of us might already be gambling addicts and not even know it. Here's a list of symptoms attributed to gambling addiction from addictioncenter.com. If you experience any of these, I highly encourage you to check if your country has a problem gambling hotline and call it. At least in the US, calls are confidential and are answered 24/7. Common signs of gambling addiction include needing to gamble with increasing amounts of money, unsuccessfully attempting to control, cut back, or stop, feeling restless or irritable when being unable to gamble, gambling to escape problems or relieve negative emotions, attempting to get back lost money by gambling more, jeopardizing important relationships or opportunities because of gambling, resorting to theft or fraud to get gambling money, Again, if any of these sound familiar, whether it's you or a loved one, please talk to a professional and learn more about it. I had to quit my job at the IHOP at some point, and I remember falling into playing a knockoff One Piece browser game at home since I didn't have much to do and less money to spend on doing it. I was the only one home at the time, and I wanted to spend money on spinning the wheels of this knockoff browser games gacha system so badly. I didn't have any money in my bank account, so I took the cash from my wallet. I didn't have a car, so I walked an hour and a half to the nearest convenience store to buy a prepaid gift card because it was faster than walking to the bank. I didn't have house keys because I just moved back in with my parents, so I left the front door to my house unlocked for 3 hours just to throw 20 bucks at a knockoff browser game I had been playing for 30 minutes. I wasn't even playing it a few hours from then. I never went back to play it. I spent the money, I felt satisfied, and then I dropped it in a matter of hours. And if you think my anecdotes are outlying cases, I got news for you. There's nothing unique about these stories. This is the sort of behavior modern gambling in games seeks to encourage. Maybe not from everybody, but from enough people to make profit. If you have any similar stories about gambling and you're comfortable sharing it in the comments section, I'd love to hear about it. If only to show others how easy it is for these games to pull us down those paths. People should know this stuff is way more predatory than they think it is. Legislation is being introduced in several countries to call loot boxes and gacha games what they are: gambling. But it's hard to say whether we'll ever separate gambling from gaming altogether. In the mobile market, it's on the rise. Sports betting, whether through fantasy football or betting on match outcomes, is widely advertised as a fun game to play with you and your friends for real money. Mobile gambling apps have surged into the mobile gaming market, attracting a larger crowd during the pandemic when we couldn't travel to casinos. Corporations continue to adopt and employ more and more gambling elements into core mechanics in video games. And most despairing of all, most of the marketing targets young adults well before they're of legal gambling age. As a new generation of video game enthusiasts cut their teeth on gacha games and are desensitized to the loot box and microtransaction frenzy, gambling will continue to be normalized as just another part of the video game experience. Stealing your parents' credit card to spend more money on a game in order to pull new characters or cosmetics isn't just gambling, it's one of the red flags of a gambling addiction. The stories of children doing this are funny, but what we're seeing are the early signs of a lifelong compulsion. The history of gaming has always been closely tied to the history of gambling. Some video game companies started out as slot machine manufacturers or went on to focus entirely on producing machines for casinos. But it's only recently video game companies have upped the ante. In the last 10 years, gambling has re-emerged as a pivotal component of generating sales and always at the expense of the consumer. Because gambling is purely at the expense of the consumer. It's almost comical how aggressive corporations are nowadays about using what they've learned from the gambling sector to instill a fake sense of necessary risk-taking in us. We're brazenly being taken advantage of, and they don't care if we're aware because their claws have already sunken in. It's disappointing to see, but it's why we should push against it harder than we already do. It's why we shouldn't allow ourselves to become complacent about it just because it's everywhere now or because it's always been there. It's been there because we haven't bothered to address it, and it keeps growing because we're becoming ambivalent to it. Ambivalence is fine and dandy when we're avoiding participating in the act, but it does nothing for change, and it does nothing to help the people around us who've already succumbed to the practice. Your ambivalence helps no one but yourself, but a little bit of empathy could turn your ambivalence into a weapon against something we should fight back against, something we should take a stand against. Speaking as a recovering gambling addict, I'd appreciate the help.